G'day. I remember back when I was in high school, so back last century, shaping some metal, a concave form, using a large wood block. And I was wondering whether I could do something similar with the metal, simply because I haven't got room for large blocks of wood, or for that matter, I haven't got large blocks of wood sitting around the place. So I came up with a thing which I don't know what to call it. Maybe leave a comment below if you can think of a good name. But it's this. And with that I can shape concave surfaces, but also do a little bit of convex. But with that, I've got my T-dolly, but with this one, I've got an extra capability, I guess, to dish things, which might be useful. As is tradition, here is some material that I'm going to use. This one it's a bit of hollow bar. I bought it, decades ago, literally, for something that never eventuated. I think I was going to make a quill head for a mill that I had at the time, but I sold the mill instead. I'm using, it's a bit of 120 hollow bar. I've got the 3-jaw chuck here, but I'm holding on the inside. Because this is a solid bit of material, I've got the tailstock extended just so that if it does decide to break free, it's not going to flip out at me. There's something here that's just going to hopefully restrain it. But all I'm going to do at the moment is a bit of a facing cut across here, and probably a bit of a clean-up cut on the outside there, just to get it, into a bright condition. I debated about showing you this, but I've taken too deep a depth of cut. It's rode up on the tool, pulled itself off the thing, and the only thing stopping it flicking out at me was the tailstock. So there's a lesson there. First of all, be careful when cleaning up stock like this, that you don't take too deep a cut. But even if you don't think anything is going to go wrong, it's probably just as well to make or take some precautions, because you never know. I've finally got clean up on the outside of my material here. The difference between the pass where it flicked out and subsequent passes, the pass where it flicked out, I had a 20 thou depth of cut, and the subsequent ones were 10 thou. So it took 3 or 4 passes to get clean up on this. But the important thing is I've got this surface cylindrical and perpendicular to this one. So I've now got clean up inside and out. The exact diameters don't worry me too much. It's more just that I've got clean up. I'm not going to be hitting metal into mill scale or anything like that. So that's all I'm worried about, really. Now, before I round off the lip here, I want to secure a plate on there so that I can, well, at least put the holes in for a plate, so I can either hold this on the vise or clamp this to a bench. This is the base plate for my, well, dolly, I guess you'd call it. I don't normally like doing this, but I've squared it up just using some diagonal lines, and then aligned it with the tailstock. If I had one of those fancy wigglery things with a universal joint, that might be a little bit easier. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But what I want to do is I want to just clean that off, as I've done with the other side here, but then I want to put a recess in and actually have a millimetre and a half, depending on what the jaws allow. If I bolt that to the back plate, all I've got is the bolts there in shear, which is not a good thing. So if I have a little raised section that will locate in this bore, that at least spares the bolts that shear, and so it makes it a little bit more robust. Now, I was originally thinking that the forces I'll be putting on this thing are vertical, but when I think about it, I'm probably going to be doing a little bit of sideways stuff, maybe not terribly hard, but anything to make it a little bit more rigid and robust is a good idea. I still need to deburr the edges here, but that'll sit on there quite happily. I can put my bolts in there on a PCD. That'll give me a flat surface to clamp in the vise, and I'm also going to put a hole in the side here so I can get a G-clamp in, so that when this is in use I can either have it clamped in a vise, I can clamp it down to some T-slots or something like that, or I can run a clamp through and clamp this base plate to a bench, just to make it a bit more versatile. I finished the base off, well, for the moment anyway. I took a light clean-up cut on both sides of a bit of 100mm black steel I had, so I've got a nice flat surface to clamp against. I then put a 6-bolt pattern in there. I probably should have had a slightly smaller PCD because I'm just starting to break out of the edges there, but the heads are still within the line, so that's okay. I'm now going to take that off and round off the front here, and to do that I need to grind a tool. I've got a piece of high-speed steel here with my circle template. I've just marked off the radius I want, and I'm now going to trim that out with an angle grinder, just to get that close to shape before I then smooth that off. Now, one thing worth noting with an angle grinder, with those thin discs, if you just sort of try and cut into it, you'll overheat the disc, you'll overheat the work, everything doesn't work, very well. However, if you have a cutting motion, just a light motion back and forth, the disc will last longer, you'll cut much more easily, and all the rest of it. Now with high-speed steel, that's particularly important because this stuff is, well, it's high-speed steel. It retains its strength at red heat, so you don't want this thing heating up because it's just not going to help you. Halfway through putting the radius on, I've done the outside radius, and I did actually leave the support in there just in case that decided to flick off with the side pauses. My ground tool didn't do too badly. One of the problems with a tool with this much contact area is you start getting a bit of chatter. Now, one tip that I was told by a chap I worked with called Ian Matheson was get a lump of blue tack and stick it on the side of your work, and that'll stop the chatter a little bit. Seems to work, so I have to experiment with that a little bit. Anyway, I've reversed the tool in the holder, and so I'm now going to be plunging in from here and trying to get that so I've got basically a smooth curve over the top there. So here I am. I've used my form tool to get a radius in there. I now need to polish that up. On the outside I could help a little bit with a file, but on the inside I think I'm going to be going, so it's just going to be your emery and bits of dowel. I was getting a bit of chatter. I did try putting a little bit of top rake on my tool, breaking the habit of a lifetime here, but it didn't really improve matters all that wonderfully. Yeah, it's just a matter of polishing now, but that's basically the form I'm after. I want to get that, rolled round, smooth, polished, all that sort of stuff, and then that's, well, apart from a little bit of machining, that's pretty much done. This is another one of those setups which, well, born out of necessity. The last thing I want to do is cut a groove in the top of this so that I can put a G-clamp in there and clamp the plate to a bench or something. Now, my clamps are square in section or rectangular in section, so I've actually clamped to a dowel pin in there on both ends. I've got the part sitting on some card because I don't particularly want T-slot nut grooves imprinted in the side of it. To get this lined up so I miss these holes, or at least I've got my best chance of missing these holes, I put some screws in the thing there, and then using a level indicated across there to get that so that was the same as the table. The last thing I'll just note here is that these T-slots are rather wide, and I run the risk of these clamps going into them. So some time ago, and one day I've got to finish this off. I found some bits of about 4 or 5 mil plate, cut out a couple of bits like this, and use that to clamp on when I'm in this situation. Anyway, I'm going to set up my annular cutter and do a series of holes down here, then get a regular milling cutter and just, you know, even that up. By now some of you are probably wondering, well, this is really nice and you've done a nice job polishing it up, but what's it actually do? Well, it does 2 things. First of all, it's like I guess you call it a T-dolly, in that you've got an external rounded surface that you can beat things on. So using a planishing hammer, you can put a curve along. Right? But the other thing is, it's a bit like the blocks that we used to have at high school for making rounded shapes. And so with a this sort of hammer, you can do all that and actually get yourself a curved shape. So I'm actually quite looking forward to using this. I've got a project in mind which I need to think about, but this means that I can produce or coax out, you know, concave things. I mean, you could, if it was big enough, I guess you could also work it around the outside here too, and do it that way. But it's another way of shaping sheet metal. So I hope this has been of interest to people. It's an interesting idea, and you know, I've as part of my experimental summer, I've made one up, and I'll try it out. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you for the next one.